And now in this video, I'm going to show you how to draw and paint a basic set of lips on your face. Start by creating a new group again in your layers window, just like I showed you in the last video, and let's call this one lips. And now, as I did in the last video where I was drawing in the nose, let's kind of go ahead and start drawing in the shape of the lips. I'm essentially creating a guideline again for where the lips would go. The corners of my lips kind of line up with the center of my eyes. Notice the vertical lines going down here. And the top part of my lip will always kind of meet toward the center of where the nose is. And we're going to kind of add in the Cupid's bow just around that middle line that I've drawn to really clearly define where everything will go. And now remember, just like the nose, your lips aren't, perfectly flat. They're very rounded and kind of protrude forward and move around in shape. This is important to remember when you're painting. Our lips are essentially divided into 5 shapes. That little shape in the middle, which kind of forms a U, then the shape on the right and left of our top lip, and then our bottom lips kind of converge together in the middle, also forming 2 shapes. You can also draw in some contour lines to really indicate where exactly the light will fall when you're painting. Also, remember to kind of darken that space between where your upper lip and your bottom lip meet, just to kind of really add in that definition. We have our guidelines laid down. Let's kind of create a new layer. Of course, remember to lower the opacity of this, because we're kind of going to draw some more lips around these guidelines that we've created. And now with the help of my guidelines, I'm kind of drawing in the outline of my lips, really, outlining that curve to really bring some dimension to those lips. And don't forget to add in the corners of the mouth. This is very important. That little shape is kind of like a little bean. If you draw it out, I mean, it doesn't directly look like a bean, but what I mean is when you're going to be painting it in, it's going to kind of go in dark around the corners and then kind of curve into a lighter shade. If you look at your own lips in the mirror, they kind of have this very, bean-like shape in that corner. Just really squint really hard and you'll see that shadow shape. Now I think that the bottom lip is a little thick, so I'm going to just erase it out and maybe try making it a little thinner. Just a few, small changes like this can really alter the way a face can really look. Now let's try a few variations. I want to try giving my face some very thin lips, just to see what it's going to look like. There's many ways that you can do this. You don't have to have one template for every kind of lip set that you draw. Thin pursed lips can make our face look very kind of stern, but it also adds a whole different element to the face altogether. Let's also try making the top lip very narrow on the top and kind of, curve it in at the bottom. This again really creates a different kind of set of lips. Let's exaggerate the bottom lip a little and, draw it below our guidelines to really just show the different variation of facial features you can have. Let's try making the cupid's bow really small and much higher up. And then let's really try lowering and drooping down the upper lip as well. And now before we begin painting on a new layer, I'm going to take a very dark kind of purplish color and I'm really going to define the certain parts of the lips, which I'm going to be painting. Remember those five shapes I was talking about? This is what they look like. And of course, don't forget the little bean shape on the side as well. These are essentially the parts that we're going to start painting. I'm just going to select like a darker purple and start adding in the shadow where the lips are pursed together. Now we're going to paint our lips just a simple skin tone. I'm going to pick a very dark brown and kind of color in the top lip. If you look at your own lips in the mirror, the top lip is always more in shadow than the bottom lip. And now let's pick a more warm and saturated kind of brownish skin tone lip color. And let's just start painting over the top and the bottom lip. Essentially just cover the whole thing. We're going to start adding and layering in shadows and shapes. Square out the bottom lip a little more. Right now I think it feels a little too rounded. And now let's add in a shape in our top lip, a slightly lighter color, just, to kind of create a dark outline that kind of defines the top of our lip. And now I'm going to take an even darker brown to just kind of, add some shadow to the parts where the lips are pressed in. Now let's paint in the bottom lip. We're going to color pick from the top lip, but we're going to lighten that a little more. And we're going to just kind of paint in some shapes. Remember to think about, how this kind of curves around our lips, and don't just like put in a flat color. I'm just going to kind of loosely keep painting in with my brush and just cleaning up the shape until I'm very happy with it. You don't want the lips to look too round in certain areas or too sharp. And I also want to keep adding in those contour lines so I remember that my lips have this nice rounded shape to them and they're not just this flat kind of plane. And now I'm going to add in a little more lighter definition to the top of the lips. This just gives it that more three-dimensional feel. Now I'm going to lower the opacity of that and then kind of selecting around the skin tone, I'm going to define the top layer, the top part of my lips again. This kind of gave my lips a nice little pout. And also remember to darken up that area where the cupid's bow is. If you look at your own lips in the mirror, you're going to notice that that area is in shadow because it kind of is a crevice that kind of goes down a little deep. Let's add in that shadow now. And I'm also just going to kind of darken this area above the lips. Now I'm going to keep selecting my skin tone around my lips and, painting them in. And I'm going to again keep, finding in some darker colors and just kind of playing with lights and shadows as I paint on. I'm constantly using layers during this process and just painting very slow strokes. I'm just going to kind of keep darkening this area and I'm constantly using my color picker as I'm painting. Now remember that little area I was telling you, which was like a bean on the corners of my mouth? We're going to start adding in some light and shadow in that area. This really just, kicks up our levels and adds a really nice definition to our lip shape. And now just as I did with my nose, I'm going to start, color picking some of those skin tones and just adding a little shadow. If you look at your own lips in the mirror, there's this darkness around the bottom part of your lips. Right where your chin juts out, just above that, you want to kind of darken that area out a bit. I'm gonna add in just a few more lighter, touches to that area just to break up that very heavy shape that we have going on right now. And now I want to kind of define my lower lip a little more, add in some of those dark, sharp lines on my lips, where the wrinkles are kind of. I'm also going to darken up that area a little, just so that it's not a very like bright, light color on our bottom lip. It just stands out a little too much. Now, of course, making sure that my shape dynamics is selected, I'm just making some very short strokes going down vertically. Think of it just like the contouring I did earlier on. This is just to kind of bring in that nice roundness and fullness to my lips. Again, working in different layers throughout the process. Let's add in some more shadow. Just, again, if you look at your own lips, there's a very dark shadow right where your lips meet. Remember to kind of vary them with thick and thin lines. And that little U shape, which is, I had drawn out earlier, we're going to really emphasize that with a thicker shape, just so that it stands out from the thinner shapes that we have going on earlier. And just like we did by drawing in the darker strokes, we're going to start adding in some lighter strokes as well. I'm going to color pick that same lighter hue that I have in my top and bottom lip, and I'm just going to start lightly drawing in some highlights in my lips. And now I'm really going to just zoom in and just start adding in that final detail, just to really pull out certain areas. You never like to zoom in too early on because it can, we can have a tendency to over render right away. I always like to start out big, just with big shapes, and then just kind of layer in everything bit by bit. And now, of course, let's add in a brighter highlight in our bottom lip, just to kind of pull it out and give it that pop. And of course, if I was painting in the entire face, I would kind of, add in a few shadows here and there, especially on the top part above my lips. There's a slight indent the way they're protruding out usually. Let's just darken up that area just a little bit underneath our lips. Of course, if we were to keep painting, I would keep that area where my chin hits bright and then darken it again at the bottom, right where my face and neck meet. And now, of course, I'm just going to add in a final highlight to really pull out that bottom lip a little more. And we're pretty much done. That is essentially how you paint a set of lips. And finally, in our next and final video, I'm going to show you how to paint an ear. See you in the next video.